Welcome to this episode of Learn Fusion. In today's episode, we're going to be covering channels and why they're so important in Fusion. So let's roll this intro and let's get into it.
We're learning Fusion together. We'll learn 2D stuff and 3D stuff and particle stuff and compositing stuff, deep pixel stuff and tracking stuff, but not other stuff, but some other cool stuff, cause we're learning Fusion together.
So in Fusion, everything operates based off of channels. So any media we bring in or anything, it has channels. Those channels are pushed along to different nodes, and every single node uses channels to use that data to see what's supposed to be happening. So for instance, we've got our regular RGBA media here, and it has channels. And to be able to see what channels your media has, if you right click in your display, you can go to channels and we can see it's got our red, green, blue, and alpha channel. And this color is just all of them combined. So if I select red, it's only going to show our red channel. If I select green, it's only going to show our green channel, our blue channel, and our alpha channel. And if I go back to color, it's just going to combine them all to show all the combined channels. Additionally, I can go up here and click this little button and see what channels and select between my different channels here. And this information is important because, like I said, every single node uses these channels to decide what it's going to do. So with our RGB channels, we can push that data along. So I could say, grab a transform node. If I go to my transform node and go to the settings, right here we have this process, and this is giving us the option of what channels we actually want to push through this transform. So if I only wanted my red channel, I can deselect all this. I can go to my controls and I can change my angle there, and I'm only changing the red channel, and I can change my size so it's bigger. I can bring another transform in, and on this one, we can go to our transform settings and only process our green channel. I can change my angle, change my size. So now it's only processing the green channel on that transform. Now, if we look, we've still got all of our channels, but on this transform, we're only pumping in and transforming our green channel. So I could also do the same with our blue channel. So go to our blue, select our blue, and I can just resize it there. Now, if we take like a simple merge and we wanted to merge these two together, you notice it's just going to take our background and our foreground and kind of put it on top of each other. We can go to our settings here and select which process we want to bring in or which channel we want to bring in, but we can't combine channels with this merge. To be able to combine those channels back together, we would have to use a channel Boolean node. So we can search for channel Boolean node, and we can bring in, say, our original media here. And I accidentally grabbed the 3D, the channel 3D, so channel Boolean's not the 3D one. There we go. Let's bring that in. And if I connect this to our foreground, and if I go to our channel node here, I can select copy. And this was our red coming in. So we want to red foreground. And for the rest of them, we want to do nothing. Do nothing. So now it's just copying those two channels in together. I could do the same thing for my green. Copy that channel node. And I can go from this into my channel Booleans node, and then go from my green into my little background there. And on this one, same thing. Our red, we want to do nothing, so we have that original channel information coming through. But our green, we want our green foreground info, and then do nothing for the rest. So we have these two combined with our original. And then we can do it one more time for the blue. Bring this one into our background, this one into our foreground, and on this node, we want to do nothing for our red and our green, and our blue, we want our blue foreground. So now we have all three of these merged in with our original with those individual colors. So now you can see we're playing them all on the individual channels. Additionally, we can do things like we can add a blur. So if we brought a blur node in and went to our blur node and we only wanted to blur this green channel, we can deselect everything and only blur our green channel. So there we go. We've got all of our channels separated and skewed crazy with our transform, but this is just showing the power of those channels. So we can bring individual channels in, combine them, and do what we want to do per channel. Now I have been unchecking this alpha. If we look at our little alpha here, I've been unchecking that because on our original here, we do have an alpha channel, but our alpha channel is one across our entire little media here. So let's get rid of all these. So if we look down here, we can see what our alpha is sitting at. So as I scroll around, you can see the A at the end is our alpha, and 1 is fully colorized. It's not transparent at all. And if I go to my alpha, you can see it's all colorized across the entire media. But if I bring something else in, like say this logo that does have an alpha in it, or does have transparency in it, and I go to my alpha, you can now see we've got our alpha, and our 1 is our white, our black are our fully transparent. So if we look down here, we're 0 on our black, 1 on our white, and then everything in between is our grayscale on our alpha, which is just going to be varying levels of transparency. Now this is black when we look at our alpha. If I look at our color, you can see we've got our checkerboard. You may be seeing this black, but if you want to actually see your transparency, if you just right click, if you remember, we can select that checkerboard. And just so you know, even if we have checkerboard here, if I go to my media out and we go to our edit page, it's going to be black in the background too. So this may be transparent. This may be a black background, but if you want to make sure your transparencies are showing correctly on your edit page, just remember you can go down here to your little options. In your viewer background, you can select checkerboard instead of black. So now you know you've got transparencies or not in your edit page. So back to Fusion. So this is an alpha channel. So if we look, we do have RGB and A, but we also have our alpha channel, which is actually driving alpha. Now all of our alphas are going to combine with each other. Meaning if I go back to color and we bring in a merge node, and I bring in our original media to the background, our little logo here to the foreground. If we look, now you can see our logo is transparent and we can see our little footage there in the background. And as I said, our alphas are combined. So if I look at our alpha, you can see all of our alphas there, but our logo is still transparent because that alpha is being carried through. Now also all of our color channels are being carried through. So for instance, say on our merge node, if we go to our settings, we have this process again. So technically I can say I only want my alpha in my little red channel from our logo. So I can uncheck those. So now I'm only pulling in my red channel. So now we've got our RGB and A from both our media 1 and our media 2 coming into the merge node, and they're being processed accordingly. So for example, if I go here, throw a transform, reduce that size. Now you can see our alpha from our media 1 is showing up correctly, and our alpha from our media 2 is showing up correctly. And we're only pushing our red channel from our logo. Now there is one other type of alpha channel, and it's called a single channel mask, but it is an alpha channel. And we create these with our little ellipse or our rectangle or our little polygon or B-splines when we create masks. So if I was to take our ellipse and plug it into our media here, we just created a single channel alpha mask. And we can increase that size. So now it's encompassing our little logo there. So there we go. We've got our logo showing up and we're good to go. But as I said, remember, we only push this red channel from our alpha. So for example, if I brought in a transform node plugged it in, and we look at our transform. If I went to my settings and I turned off our red channel, go to our controls and change our size, you notice our red channel of our logo is staying the same size. And you can see why, because if we go to our little colors here and we look at our red channel, you can see our logo is coming through on our red channel. But if we go to our green, we no longer see our logo. If we go to our blue, we no longer see our logo. That's because we only push that red channel through. And if we went back to our merge, went to our settings, and we wanted to push that blue through also, now we would see our logo in the blue. And it would also change size with our little transform here, because now that's popping through. And the same goes with most other nodes we input. It's going to have that selection on there. So if we bring our blur back in, we go to our blur and we only want to blur our blue channel here. We can only blur our blue. So there we go. We've got our little logo going with our different channels, and I have no idea why my playback's so slow. Now, on top of our RGB color channels, our alpha channels, and our single channel masks, we have what's called auxiliary channels. And our auxiliary channels encompass a lot of different channels. So if I go here and we look at our little awesome Blender default cubes here off in the distance, and let's go ahead and add a Gamut Node. Since this is ACES, I'm going to swap this up from ACES to sRGB. There we go. And let's actually throw a background on there. Let's bring in a merge. Background, foreground. There we go. We've got our awesome little default cube scene there. And if I look at our loader node here, that's all this is. I've renamed it. It's a loader node, bringing in that EXR file. If I look at this and I right click and I go to our channels, you can see we have a whole bunch of channels. So we've got our RGBA. We now also have our Z depth. We have UV coordinates. We have normals, vectors, and positions. Now, by default, you want to make sure you push those channels from any 3D program you use. You want to select those as layers or render layers. Otherwise, they're not going to be there. So anytime you export out of, say, Blender or Houdini or Maya, make sure you're exporting all those additional channels with your multi-layer EXR. That way they all show up. Because when we go to our format over here in a file, this is where we assign those channels. And by default, it might be wrong, or it might have nothing set up, but we have to go and assign these channels. So for our RGB and A, all I did is assigned our combined RGB and A. And under our Z, I assigned our depth Z, which was exported as a pass for our render. Additionally, I exported the U and the V coordinates, as well as our X, Y, and Z normal layers, our velocity, and the position X, Y, and Z. Now, I'll cover all these different layers and what they do later when we cover both 2D and 3D compositing, because these all are extremely important when we composite both in 2D and 3D. And then any of the channels we assign are going to be available. When we right click and go to channels, you can see all these channels are available. Because if I uncheck our little depth here and go back to channels, we no longer have our depth. So if I turn it back on, now that channel is available. Now, just mind you, some of these channels will disappear / be eaten. As I say, some nodes will eat your data. Now, the Gamut node, just being a color node, is not going to eat any of your data. But if I go to our merge node and right click and go to our channel, you notice none of that info is there anymore. And that's why I say some nodes eat your data or are not passed along from different nodes. And just so you know, if I right click and go to my channels, these are channels that are being output, not that are being input. These are channels that are being output from whatever node you're selected on. So if I right click, only my R, G, B, and A channels are being output from the merge node. If I go to my Gamut node, right click, go to my channels. Oops. If I go to my channels, all of these are being output from my Gamut node. And the way you use some of this information is going to depend on what kind of node. So we can use our Z channel. So if I brought in a depth blur, and we look at our little depth blur, actually, let's look at our merge, but beyond our depth blur here. And if we look, we're using our Z channel. And we have multiple ways to bring in that depth blur, but we did push a Z channel. So we're going to use our Z channel because that's sent straight from our 3D program. And then we can change our blur size here. Let's change it to 4 so you can really see the difference. And our depth of field, we're going to go ahead and make like 2.5, and we'll make our scale 1. So we can really see how blurry this is. So if I change our focal point, it's going to change the point where we're focused in at. Or I can just select a sample, and as I click around, you can see different cubes are coming into focus. And that is using our Z channel. But as I said, just remember, if we were to take this depth blur and put it after our merge node, it's not going to work correctly because that Z depth information isn't being pushed along. We need to make sure we're at a location where our Z information is actually being pushed. And again, you can always right click in your channels here and see what's being pushed through. And if I go to my depth blur here, right click, go to my channels, you can see they're all still being pushed through. But again, on my merge, they are not. So if down the line we needed to use our Z information, you would at least have to come from a node up here that is pushing along that Z information and re-merge it back in. And if we wanted to use different channels like our vector channel, if you notice, we've got a little EXR here, and we exported some vector information. So if we look at our velocity, I selected our vector X and vector Y as a pass. So these passes are going through. And let's go ahead and copy our Gamut node here, since this is ACES as well. Let's input it there so we can see what's going on. So now if we look and we go to our channels, you can see we have our vector channels here. And if I view our vector channels, we're not going to see anything on frame 1. And this is where that reverse velocity comes in handy sometimes. But just know if you do reverse velocity, sometimes it'll throw off your blurs. But when you do 3D renders, this is why you want to make sure you're rendering extra scenes so you can catch that velocity before. So I didn't do that. So if I go to my first frame, there is no velocity in my little model. But if I go to the next frame, there is velocity. So a fix to that is you normally export more than you need. So if I needed 48 frames, I would export like 50 frames and just back it up one. So my velocity is actually on the first frame. But this is what your velocity looks like. And just know, you might think stuff like your Gamut node is going to change your velocity color. It is not. So if I go to my Gamut node and my loader node, Gamut node, it's all the same. Our Gamut node is only changing our RGB information. It's not changing our vector information. So our vector colors will remain the same because it's these colors in here that dictate the velocity of the movement of our little model here. So we can go back to our color. So to be able to use this, I could add a vector motion blur, and I'm going to add that. If we go to our little motion blur here, and let's steal our background so we can kind of see what's going on. There we go. And if I go to our little vector motion blur here, you can see we're using our vector X and our vector Y channels. And we have other channels we can use, but we pushed along that vector X and vector Y information so we can use it. And I can just change the scale here. So if I go back to where she's moving, you can see now we have motion in her movement. So we went from this original with no motion to her actually having motion, and that's tons. So maybe 0.5. So now if we play, she's got some motion blur based off the real vectors calculated within our 3D program and pushed along as a vector pass. So you can see the more passes you push along, the more info you'll be able to use. And like I said, we're going to be going over all this stuff when we go over compositing, because this is where a lot of this stuff really comes into play. For instance, I'll just show you real quick. If I grab a, say, Cryptomatte node, and let's bring in our footage, and we can go to our Cryptomatte node here. You can see we've got all this Cryptomatte information that was sent out of our vector channel. And yes, when you're in your 3D program, you have to push along this data. And here I really didn't do it too efficiently because there's tons of different information. But if I go here and I just select, if I go down, you can see we have all these Cryptomatte objects as layers. So on our Cryptomatte node, I can go here and just add and select different layers of my Cryptomatte. So I can say maybe add all her clothing here. And once I select each individual Cryptomatte, and then let's select her helmet. There we go. We've selected all that. And if I go here and I put output as alpha. So now if I was to bring in a merge node, let's bring in our gamut here, and let's bring in the background, input that, and we can input our Cryptomatte as a mask for our background. And if we go to our background, we can change the color of our little outfit there. And obviously on our merge node, we want to change how we're bringing that in, and maybe change the blend. But now using those individual channels into our Cryptomatte, we can go to our background, use it as a mask, and change our background to whatever color we want. And it's much easier when it comes to compositing and everything. So those are using channels within Fusion. And like I said, as we get to our compositing episodes, both the 2D and the 3D compositing and other stuff like working with 3D and working with our deep pixel compositing, we'll get into these channels and how these channels actually work a little more. So I will see you in the next episode.